Welcome to LUTV News in Focus, where we feature interesting topics on campus, in the community, and in the world of culture. I am Carson Racich. Cities across the United States have witnessed protesting and rioting after the death of George Floyd. Recent scrutiny of the police have risen after the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Katy Scarmardo is a local art teacher in Kenosha and has witnessed the unrest in the city. She is here to tell us her experience and what the community has done to stay positive. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So how close were you to all the destruction and everything going on during the chain of events?
Well, the initial shooting was probably about 1.5 miles, but as the social media was spreading and people were gathering, a walk began towards the courthouse, and I live about 3 blocks from the courthouse, and that is where a lot of action was taking place. I live in an area called downtown, and that's where destruction was on the first night. And then I teach about I teach about 1/2 mile away, which is next to Uptown, and that is where the second night and the night of the shootings all took place. So right there.
Pretty much in the middle of everything.
Pretty much, unfortunately.
Can you describe to me the nights of all the unrest to you?
Well, the first night I had been having a lovely dinner and had gotten home and had seen the video footage and immediately knew that it was probably going to become a really ugly situation. And at first I wasn't too concerned because, like I said, I felt like I was a little bit farther away from where everything happened. But as I could watch on social media and then eventually hear from my windows, the commotion came in my vicinity. That first night was very scary because it was live and I was watching it live, and through watching a local person named Corey Elijah's live stream, you could also see people's comments, and it was becoming very clear that people were starting to start caravans from other cities towards Kenosha. That's probably what was scariest. I'm not ever afraid in my own town, but when out-of-towners came, which became the situation, that's when things got ugly. So probably late into that evening, the local person realized the people that were starting to start fires and cause destruction were not from Kenosha. So he logged off. And at that point, I just sat in the dark and listened to make sure that it wasn't coming too close, like to my condo. So that was not a lot of sleep that night. The next morning I was able to get up and walk around and saw a lot of the destruction in my neighborhood, and it made me feel really horrible. It's not part of what this community is about. So I had to pack everything, both to move my daughter to college, and I didn't feel safe where I was anymore. So I packed up important papers and pictures and mementos and went, out of town a bit. That second night, it was getting very, very ugly. I was getting reports from people about caravans from St. Louis and from Seattle and from Chicago and Minneapolis and Milwaukee. And it was not looking very good. I had to move my daughter to college the next morning, so I tried not to watch all night. But it was, at some point I had to block it off because I knew I had to do a drive. So that would have been the second night. That was when our uptown was burned down, essentially. That was a very scary night as well, and just heartbreaking all around, all of it. The third night, it seemed calm. Again, this was live footage streaming all the time, where I was able to kind of keep my eye on it, because now I was out of town at night because we had a curfew also. And that was the night it seemed fairly peaceful, and I thought, I'm finally going to get a good night's sleep. And then that was the night that the fella shot the other guys. So since that time, the National Guard did come, and it's all around me. They're starting to leave now, but they were stationed all around. The news was all around. The morning after the shootings of I can't remember everybody's name, but we were supposed to go back to school in person, but they closed the schools for the rest of that week, and we were from home. And when my meetings were done at home, I had seen someone put on social media, there was a small group of people that were going to start painting. And being an art teacher, I just threw my paints in my wagon and I went down to one of my favorite businesses, because most of the businesses downtown are people I know. And I started painting a board and I posted. And then the next day, I had a few more people that said they'd like to join. It took off with a huge amount of momentum that no one ever expected. So by the second day of painting during my lunch hour, there was people all over downtown painting boards. It became a much more organized kind of event. It became almost. There was tons of people driving by, looking and passing things out and making cookies. And then it was, by that point, a Facebook page started called Recovering Kenosha. And someone I had been painting with said, put on that site, well, now that we hit downtown, we're going to move uptown to the businesses that were all burned. Some of them were still standing, not all of them. We started painting uptown, and that just snowballed. And so I spent 4 days painting, but I think most of the community in one way or another either painted or delivered water or came out and took pictures to try to assemble them into a book or to put on t-shirts. It was a very therapeutic thing to do. A lot of my family and friends that would never normally be painting joined in, and they were so glad they did, because it reminded you that even though this really awful thing happened in our town, that doesn't reflect our town at all. And our community did what our community always does, and they came together and they tried to put positive spins on everything. And there were barbecues, and there were DJs in the street, and people painting, and it was it was very healing. But unfortunately, when I look out my window, even now from my classroom, I mean, I'm looking at burnt out buildings. So it's been a process.
Being a teacher, I mean, you have your own kids of your own, and you have to be a mom to them, but you obviously have a special place in your heart for all your students. As everything was going on, did you have anything in the back of your mind that you're thinking about what's going to happen to students?
Yes, because of course, you knew it was going to be, there's been so much unrest already, and I knew this was going to increase the unrest, especially in our town. I never thought it was going to become what it did. But, initially after that very first night, or that second night of the fires, I, got a text in the middle of watching the live stream that one of my students' families was homeless. So I spent that first day back at work at where they were staying. We brought, our school gathered some things together to take over to them. And I did share on social media, because I guess that's kind of where my head went with everything was, here's this little girl who lost everything, and she made me a little picture that said, "I love you." And I just shared it. I'm like, if this little girl can still feel love, we all can. So the kids haven't been back to school. They come in person on Monday, but I worry about them all the time, and I'm worried about how scary. I mean, my neighborhood where my kids are, they all lost power for quite a lot of time. The shootings and the burning, and I mean, everything's right here in front of them. I'm sure it's been very traumatizing for all of them.
Do you think with everyone painting the downtown and uptown that this can show the rest of pretty much the country that we can as a whole come together and move past all this, especially from little kids, making the drawing for you and just move past this all?
I hope so. I mean, in the uptown area where my students live, the day of the painting and the music and the food, I was hoping, I saw some of my students in that area those days. And I hoped that they felt the love, and they despite all the trauma and scary things that were happening, they felt supported by the community and felt like they mattered. And, I hope that's the case moving forward. I'm going to a meeting today after work. I'm in an organization called Building Our Future. And it started a couple of years ago. just to try to make the community a better place. It's a very eclectic group of people. We focus on this neighborhood and helping kids and helping families. And I'm sure tonight we'll talk about, you know, how we can keep some of this positive energy going.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And thank you for
You're welcome.
watching LUTV News in Focus. To see more content from LUTV News, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook.